Hello and welcome back to the FFS podcast, the show where finance, business, culture and common sense occasionally collide. I'm Rachel Chadwick Harrison, accountant, business owner and managing director of one of Warwickshire's leading firms, which basically means I spend most of my life talking to business owners who can't find staff, can't keep staff, and are increasingly wondering whether anyone under 25 actually wants a career anymore. So today we're diving into something that affects every business owner, parent, teacher and employer in the country. What exactly is going on with the next generation and their attitude to work? Are young people becoming lazy? Or are they simply reacting rationally to a world that looks completely different from the one that the previous generations entered? To help unpack all that, I'm joined by Kate Ankers, an English teacher and actually head of English who spends every day on the front line with young people navigating social media, AI, anxiety, ambition, exams, and whatever trends exploded on TikTok this morning. Kate, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
So, Kate, let's get straight into it. Do students today still genuinely believe that hard work leads to success?
I think most students do understand that hard work leads to success, and certainly the successful ones do understand that. I think that some students or some youngsters find hard work difficult. They find it difficult to find the motivation, but they do understand the concept, I think. Perhaps Instagram and things like that haven't helped, with the rise of the influencer of get rich quick and here's your side hustle and that kind of thing. But, I do think the majority of students I come into contact with understand that hard work does lead to success, even if it isn't easy.
And it is quite different because you're a similar age to I am. And when we grew up, there was the thought of being a rock star or a model if you had the body for it. But they always seem so far-fetched. These days, Instagrammers and influencers, they just seem like normal people, don't they?
Yeah, that's it. I think you can, you see examples all the time of people that have just blown up on YouTube for messing about in a park. And obviously that then seems like something that is achievable to a young lad who just wants to go and mess about in a park with his friends and doesn't necessarily want to have to spend hours working towards a goal.
It does feel more appealing, but it is short-lived and that money will soon be gone. So when you compare students now to 5 or 10 years ago, what do you think's changed most in their mindset?
I'm not sure I've seen a massive change in their mindset. I think that there is beginning to be an impact on attention span. And I do link that to, the rise of TikTok and the 2-minute video and the 2-second decision to move on from that video. And then I think obviously attention is important to success because you need to sustain your attention on something for a significant amount of time, and they're not exceptionally good at that anymore. And that isn't all students by any means, but certain students do find that more difficult. But I don't think I've seen a massive change in their mindset. I think we like to always believe that the new generation are a big problem, but I don't think teenagers have changed hugely since I was young. Not really.
To be fair, you're right. Everyone does talk about the next generation is a problem because of X, Y, Z. It's always something. It's just that every generation is different, more so. Do you think students still admire wealthy people and success, or is there actually more resentment towards money now?
I think that, the majority of students that I come into contact with have a desire to earn good money and have a good life. Some of them think more about what it means to have a good life rather than just to have financial success. But yeah, no, I would say that people are still driven to earn good money and to be successful.
Well, that's good to hear because that's something employers can always motivate people with. So as someone working with business owners every day, I hear employers saying nobody wants to work hard anymore. Do you think that's fair criticism or really a lazy stereotype?
I don't think it's fair to say that all young people don't work hard anymore or don't want to work hard anymore. Some young people I know are incredibly hardworking. I know a 23-year-old who is running their own business. She's all over Instagram. She's grafting, 12, 14 hours a day. I've got kids at the moment who are spending this half-term holiday revising and working towards their mock exams and their speaking and listening assessment to just make sure it's perfection and get their top grade. So I think that it depends on the person, and it's always depended on the person.
I think that's a really balanced view, Kate. Thank you for that. We actually touched on our next segment already about TikTok attention spans and that dopamine hit. Do you find that you struggle now to compete with TikTok and YouTube for the attention anymore? Are kids struggling in lessons to pay attention?
Again, some students, not all students.
But is that different now than it was 10 years ago? Is the attention span different?
I do think there is a change in attention span. I think that's fair. And I think that it's not universal across all students, but I do think there is now a real difficulty for students to sustain attention on longer tasks. So things that require them to sort of focus for a long period of time, particularly the younger ones. It's less pronounced as they get older. So perhaps it's almost like the rise of technology delays the development rather than removes it completely. So I do think that's definitely a thing. Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen to the workplace when an entire generation grows up consuming information in 8-second clips?
I don't think we can possibly know what's going to happen to the workplace because I do feel like this generation are coming of age in a difficult time because who knows what AI is going to do to all of our jobs. Perhaps their fast attention span will work in their favour because they'll be able to deal with vast amounts of information and processing better than we've grown up able to.
Maybe they'll be better at adapting to change, potentially.
Yeah, potentially.
I say in business now, we see younger employees wanting instant progression, instant feedback, instant flexibility. I feel like patience has become a bit of a dying skill.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think that, I don't know, as a teacher, I feel like compelled to defend young people a little bit. I think they get a very bad name, and I think that the bad ones always make the headlines. But my life is filled with like wonderful, hardworking, dedicated, ambitious, caring young people who want to do well for themselves.
Just need to be given a chance.
Yeah, I do. I think that they do need to be given a chance. And I think that, I do think children are younger these days, and that's a parenting thing, it's a schooling thing. They're kept younger for longer. And then we launch them out the door at 18 and say, right, now you've got to be a grown-up.
You're fully baked.
Yeah, and they're not anymore because of the way that we raise them, because they don't play out anymore. They're not self-sufficient out on the streets. They're not allowed to play unsupervised. They're not allowed to do all the sort of things that made us perhaps grow up a little bit more quickly. And, neuroscience now tells us their brains aren't even fully developed till they're 25, yet we're expecting them to act like adults in a world that we've never socialised them that way in. And then it's just, well, here's your cut off, now you're out of school, go and be everything we expect you to be. And I think that's quite hard.
Well, I think there's a big difference to when we grew up. There was quite an expectation that you would have a Saturday job that would involve talking to people. I myself worked at a hairdresser, sweeping hair, washing old ladies' hair. Lots of people I knew picked up glasses in the pub and did loads of different things where they were then socialising with people, and they're actually working at a much younger age. But now with insurance problems, they don't want under 16s there, do they? Yeah. And people aren't getting that exposure like they were when we were young.
Yeah, no, definitely.
What's the wildest example you've seen of social media shaping a student's expectations of life or work?
I'm not sure I have seen a wild example of that, to be honest. I think a lot of young people are much more social media savvy than we give them credit for. I think that, they know it for what it is. The government's just brought in a recent phone ban across schools, and actually I've had so little problem enforcing that ban. The students are just like, we're not that bothered. It's okay. We can do without our phones for those 6 hours. I don't think they're as influenced by it as we perhaps fear they are, in terms of it meaning a lot to them. Yes, they like to scroll on TikTok at the end of the day, but a lot of it for them, I think, is the social connection. And whereas we might have sat for 3 hours on the landline in the hallway, they just spend that time messaging their friends. But ultimately, it's still communication and it's still social contact. And I think that is more what they're interested in. Perhaps social media has given, students or children who have struggled to make those social connections other places to go, further afield, different groups. But ultimately, I still think the majority of young people are still seeking out social connection much more than they're seeking false idols.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because actually, from speaking to friends and other business owners, a lot of people complain that their parents struggle with the social media because they think things are real. It's actually almost the generation above us that that weren't brought up with the internet, that look at things and go, oh my God, there's been a tsunami in this country. Like, Mom, that's fake. That's not real news. And maybe it's that fear that we're projecting onto them, potentially. So moving on to further education, are schools still pushing university at the moment?
I actually don't think that they are. I think that there's a fair and balanced approach to options for children when they leave school. You know, we do a lot of PHSE and careers guidance. Like every single Thursday in school, we have a careers session in tutor group, and we tell them about all sorts of pathways. We talk about apprenticeships, we talk about T levels, we talk about degree level apprenticeships, we talk about university, we talk about college. It definitely isn't one size fits all and you almost go to university anymore. I know that seems to be a bit of a perception in society, but it absolutely isn't. And the majority of students I work with really like the idea of an apprenticeship. It's just actually quite difficult to find decent apprenticeships.
Well, the government pulled level 7 apprenticeships, degree apprenticeships have gone. I think it was absolutely the wrong decision to take there. I'm not impressed with Labour government at all, but anyone who listens to this podcast will know that. But also the cost of university is very different from when we were brought up. You know, would you encourage your own child to take on 50 to 60k of student debt today?
I mean, it's a difficult one. No one wants to send their child into, a life fueled by debt. But when you sit down and do the sums and you look at it, the repayments on a lower wage are very minimal. And I've looked at it through all of the steps, and I think up to about earning about £65,000, which is a decent wage. At that point, you'd be paying back about £300 a month, which isn't great, but it also isn't crippling. And if university is something that you really want to do for your job, for your career, or simply for your life experience, I don't think that should be denied to a student. I think that, it's almost gone a little bit the other way, and university can be almost like a bit of a dirty word now and mocked of like, oh, why would you do that? Well, actually, I don't regret going to university. I couldn't do the job that I do without going to university, and they were good years and I grew a lot in them. So, if you never earn more than £25,000, you're never paying it back. So if you really wanted to go, I wouldn't necessarily discourage somebody.
So it's a balanced risk, effectively.
Yeah.
Are trades apprenticeships and entrepreneurship finally getting the respect they deserve?
I think they definitely do.
I think the attitude has changed. It was always seen as the T levels, and they used to joke about NVQs being not very qualified. But actually, you don't hear that nowadays.
Absolutely not. It's I think university can be seen as, why would you do that if there is this alternative route and you're emotionally and practically ready for it? Because let's be honest, it's not easy to go out at 18 and work a full-time job and then study at the same time. That takes a real, tough, dedicated kind of person, and not everyone's ready for that at 18. But if you are, I think it's absolutely a superior way to get into the career of your dreams.
Well, I meet plenty of business owners who are looking for people with more experience rather than graduates. Do you think the schools are preparing kids for the real economy?
I think it's difficult for any school to prepare students for what may or may not occur in their adult life. I think there is a focus now on developing the whole child and developing the they call them the soft skills, don't they?
Soft skills are so important.
Yeah, I think, and there is a sort of focus on that in schools to try and do that. But it's also difficult to tell a 13-year-old that what I'm talking to you about right now and the thing I'm trying to teach you right now is going to have a massive impact on your life at 25, because teenagers are a little bit like puppies. They live in the moment. They live in that day, and it's hard to get a lot of them to sort of see beyond that and recognise that what they're being taught and developed in now. So I suppose as teachers, our job is to do that in a kind of age-appropriate, engaging way, so they're developing the skills without really sort of thinking, oh, this is going to be the impact in 10 years' time. They're just doing it day to day. And I think schools are getting better at that. I'd like to think we're not such exam factories. Obviously exams and qualifications are important, but so is the whole person.
So as a business owner, I've hired 16-year-old fresh out of school, 18-year-old straight out of college, and a graduate 21 straight out of university. And I'd say all three of them had exactly the same human office skills. Zero. They've got no skill set there. I feel there's a lot more that schools, colleges and universities could do to prepare people for what a real life job is like.
Yeah, I probably can't dispute that, but I do, we've got a very full curriculum, and that kind of thing often comes from central government. We are told to a degree what we need to teach, the subjects we need to cram in. We go back to Michael Gove's curriculum reforms, and he decided that the most important thing that students should do would be to learn 18 poems off by heart and write about them in an exam. So, you compare that to a country like Norway or Sweden, where those soft skills are like embedded in the curriculum, you know, and the children are like study a curriculum designed to develop them, then yes, but schools only have so much say over their curriculum.
Yeah, I think that's what the government should be bringing in for us, though. I think it would be massively beneficial if they knew how to send an email, how to answer the phone, you know, open the post, allocate it out, just basic skills.
But it is also difficult to do that when you've got 200 children in a year group, and not all of them are going to need those skills. Some of them are going to need to know how to edge a garden. Some of them are going to need to know how to fix a car. Like, the idea, I suppose, of education is to be broad and balanced, so that they're all starting from a particular point and then go off in their own paths.
But communication could be better taught.
Yeah.
Yeah, communication is needed in almost every job, I would have thought.
It's a confidence thing for a lot of them. It's
and that's
a lack of
the support that
confidence.
they need. It's those soft skills that are so important. It's something I say over and over again. I can teach technical skill all day long, but if they come with the soft skills already ingrained, it makes life so much easier. So I wouldn't be an accountant if I didn't ask you this question. Do you think financial literacy should be treated as seriously as maths and English?
I absolutely do. It's something I've done a little bit with my own tutor group and my own son, because I do think it's really important. But again, the problem that you've got is trying to make something relatable to an 11, 12, 13, even 14, 15-year-old that won't apply to them until at least 2 years in the future, when they get their first credit card or their first adult bank account or their first opportunity for a loan or a mortgage, all of those things. It's difficult to get them to be overly invested in it. I am convinced that they are taught these things, but they don't land because they're not relevant at that point.
That's interesting. I remember trying to teach my 11-year-old at the time what VAT was, and the whole concept was really foreign to him. What? We go in the shop and everything has extra tax on it? It's just bizarre. So let's go on to AI. What podcast wouldn't be touching on AI these days? What is students' attitude towards it? Are they terrified by it or are they relaxed?
I think, again, because they're growing up with it, I don't think it phases them or worries them in the way that it worries us. I think that they're perhaps not quite as aware of its capabilities and possibilities as some adults are at the moment. There's a lot of, making photos of their friends doing silly things on AI. But yeah, they're sort of taking it in their stride. I mean, school, we're trying to sort of teach a lot about the difference between using AI as like a study buddy versus using AI to cheat and plagiarism. I'm a big fan of AI. I think it's really made my job a lot easier, and I teach the kids about it. They joke that I'm in a relationship with ChatGPT.
I think it's true.
But, I'll say to them, look, I'm not sitting at home with you, but you've got a system there that can say, set me 10 questions on this topic, and you can use it like that. So I think it's about teaching them how to use it effectively, and ultimately once they get that in their head, they will outstrip our ability to do anything with it, because the young people are always the ones leading the way with technology, aren't they? So,
well, it's just so good for things like deep research, and exactly like you said, we've got a couple of apprentices who are using Claude to create them extra exams to practice. So it's definitely got its benefits. Are teenagers choosing careers differently because of AI?
If you think, really, it's only blown up the last year or so, hasn't it?
That's a good point.
So I think that they will in the future. I think we're in very much a bit of a no man's land at the minute in terms of what it's going to look like and what jobs are going to be. 10 years, no more driving jobs?
You just don't know, do you? You just don't know.
I think we're a way off automation of gardening, plumbing, carpentry, painting. The robot generation is a while away yet, but
it could be the next generation.
Yeah,
it could be 20 years.
The world is going to change because of it. It's already changing, but I don't think we're yet aware of exactly what that's going to look like. So I think we're in a little bit of a limbo with it at the minute.
So as an English teacher, are you already spotting AI written work?
It's really easy to spot AI written work.
Do they all come out the same?
It'll just be, there'll be a passage that's very student-y and then a passage that's very AI, and it just stands out really obviously. And I never really penalise. I always say to the kids, if you care enough to try and plagiarise, you care enough to try.
So you might as well just try.
So you might as well just try. And I just have a chat with them about what it means and why I'd far rather know, what are their thoughts and what do they think about the thing rather than what AI thinks about it.
Because you can just chat yourself with
Yeah, exactly. I don't, it's not a huge problem. I think I can imagine how it might be when they're trying to submit coursework, but English doesn't have any coursework anymore. And like I say, it stands out very obviously when they've overly relied on it in an essay or anything like that.
Brilliant. So moving on to resilience, pressure, and real life. Are young people genuinely struggling more mentally today, or are adults simply taking it more seriously now than we used to?
That is a really interesting question. I think it's a mix of both. So I think that perhaps young people are struggling a little bit more. I think things like social media and the constant pressure to be on and then no respite from anything that might be happening in their lives because of the constant contact with their phones. I think that definitely does have an impact, and your brain chemicals and your dopamine and all of that sort of stuff. I definitely think that plays a part. But I also do think, yes, we are more aware, whereas we might have been told to sort your face out and stop sulking around, we'll be with our kids, let's sit down and talk about your big feelings. It's a different approach from parents, and I think much more of awareness of mental health, wherever the balance is completely right. I don't know, perhaps we go a little bit far with overdiagnosing what is just normal growing pains and, struggling with a little bit of feeling nervous and anxious. That's perhaps a normal part of growing up. If someone had said to me, I was always crying as a teen, I was always sad, I was always anxious, I was worried, I fretted about things. I used to look in the mirror and cry and be like, oh, I'm not pretty enough. If someone had said, oh, you're depressed, would I have been, oh, yeah, I am depressed? I don't know.
And then taken some antidepressants, the doctors.
So I think it's a bit of both. But, yeah.
It's a bit of both.
Yeah.
Do you think we're protecting young people too much from failure now?
No, I actually don't, because ultimately every single child in the country who is in year 11 right now is sitting down, pitted against each other for the ultimate success and failure to the end of their school career. So but I don't think we do. I think that failure is still as much a part of people's lives as it ever was.
I think that might come down more to the parents than the teachers, though. There are some parents out there who will just protect their children from failure every which way. Say, oh, it's not your fault. But I know you quite well, and I think both of us are a little bit more stricter that way, and we will let our kids fail and learn the experience of failure and the repercussions of it.
Yeah, and ultimately, unless you plan to protect them forever and after death, at some point they're going to have to come up against hard things.
Yeah.
But I think life will do that to everybody.
I agree. So what life skills do you think are disappearing fastest?
I'm not convinced they are. I really don't. Like I say, I think there's a real narrative about the younger generation, but there's always been a narrative about the younger generation. 20 years ago, it was Cameron's hug a hoodie. Now it's like, oh, they don't care, they're not bothered, they've got no life skills, they're the snowflake generation. I just think the youth have always been criticised.
Mm-hmm. What qualities still separate the students who thrive from the ones that struggle?
Resilience and dedication, I think, yeah.
So that's what we need to look for as employers, resilience and dedication if we want a hard-working employee.
Definitely.
How do you test that?
It's a really difficult one to test at an interview, isn't it?
It is. It's got to be a trial, hasn't it? It's got to be why don't you have a week's paid trial, see how it goes, and you get a feel for someone, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think I think those would be the main two, and I don't know how you test that.
You can't
over time.
Okay, we've got a very quick fire round. So, realistic or delusional? I want to be an influencer.
Delusional for the majority.
For the majority. I'll retire by 35.
Delusional.
I shouldn't have to work a 9 to 5.
What was my other one? Inspirational, motivational? Realistic. You shouldn't have. There are other options. You can do all the shifts. You can make your work.
You could do the night shift at Tesco if you want.
You can do weekends. You can do flexible working. It doesn't have to be 9 till 5.
I need purpose, not just a salary.
Oh, absolutely realistic.
I agree. I see so many people now choosing jobs because of the sector that they're in, and they might work, obviously I speak to people in finance, they might work in finance, so all they're doing is putting numbers into a machine and getting reports out, but they want to work for a company that has a real purpose and that's making a difference. You didn't see that in the earlier generations. And final one, work-life balance should come before loyalty to a company.
I think it is 50-50. I think that the company needs to respect that sometimes you need your life and they need to support that occasionally. But I also think that sometimes, your company does need to come first. Like
It's give and take,
it's give and
isn't
take.
there?
There are times when you just need to step up. If that company's been good to you, you owe something back to that company.
So, final question for you, Kate. If you were 16 again today, knowing everything that you know now, what path would you take?
Same path I took.
You're really happy. You love
I
your job.
love my job. I love my job. It's the best job in the world.
There is a job for everybody. Well, Kate, thank you so much for coming on. I think conversations like this matter because businesses, schools, and parents are all trying to navigate the same massive cultural shift. And honestly, nobody fully knows where work, education, and ambition are heading next. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe, follow, and share it with someone who constantly complains about kids these days, or a teenager who thinks becoming an influencer counts as a pension plan. This has been the FFS podcast. I'm Rachel Chadwick Harrison, and until next time, for finance's sake, check the numbers.